I stumbled upon the well at dusk, half hidden by brambles and cloaked in the musk of damp earth and decaying leaves. Its moss-covered stone rim was slick under my fingers, each rock slick with moisture that smelled of wet clay and something faintly metallic, like half-forgotten rain. The forest around me held its breath. No rustle of wind in the pines, no scurry of small creatures, only the distant rush of a hidden stream. I knelt and lifted the rotted wooden cover, its plank whining on rusted hinges, and a chill exhaled from the depths below, cold enough to make the hairs on my forearms stand on end. I shone my flashlight into the black throat of the well, and the beam scattered against ancient stones slick with algae. The air that rose smelled of ozone and old sorrow, and in the widening circle of light, I saw nothing but darkness and dripping water far below. Then, soft, almost swallowed by the echo, a sob fractured the silence. A child's cry. My heart lurched. I pressed my ear to the rim, and the sobbing grew clearer, each gasp hollow and trembling, as though carried on a wind I could not feel. I flicked off the flashlight. In the pitch, I tasted copper on my tongue and felt an ache behind my eyes. The forest seemed to lean in, waiting. I swallowed, the sound of my own breath thunderous in the hush. "Who's there?" I whispered, voice lost in the void. The sobbing paused, and I wondered if I'd imagined it. Then, from the bottom of the well, a single pleading word drifted upward. "Help!" My pulse hammered. I knew in that charged moment that lifting cover and listening had sealed my fate. I gripped the rim, knuckles white, and leaned forward, peering into the endless black. I found the frayed rope coiled beside the well, strands stiff with grime and salt, and my fingers trembled as I looped it around the mossy urn. The rope's fibers rasped against stone, sending a faint vibration through my palms. I tugged, and it rattled into darkness far below, each coil vanishing into the void with a wet slap that echoed like a distant heartbeat. My flashlight beam wavered, illuminating swirling motes of dust and moisture as I knelt, listening to the drip-drip of water mingled with the sobbing that now sounded closer, more insistent. The sobs carried a child's cadence, short, staccato gasps threaded with panic. I secured the rope to an iron hook set into the well's rim, its metal eaten by rust, and took a deep breath of the cool night air, tasting ozone and raw earth. My heart pounded so fiercely I feared the echo would betray me to whatever lurked below. I tightened my grip and began lowering myself inch by inch, the rope's rough strands biting into my palms. The flashlight swung at my side, casting a slender cone of light that reveled slick stones and faint algae blooms clinging to the walls like slumbering ghosts. At the halfway point, a sudden gust of musty air rushed upward, snuffing my light and sending a shiver through my core. I froze, breath caught in my throat, and when I dared to speak, my voice trembled. "I'm here. Where are you?" The reply was a single desperate whisper. "Closer." The rope jerked beneath me as though something below had gripped it, and my stomach lurched. My flashlight flickered back to life, and in its beam I saw the bottom of the well, a shallow ledge slick with moss, just wide enough to stand on, and beyond it a tunnel opening into utter blackness. I dropped the rope looped around my waist so I could steady myself, and my boots landed softly on the cold stones. The child's sobbing had become a series of faint sniffs, as if someone held their breath. I shone the light into the tunnel's maw. The air that poured out smelled of damp wool and old tears, and I felt a pulse in the stone underfoot. Rhythmic, alive. The flashlight revealed footprints, tiny and muddy, leading into the gloom. Each print seemed impossibly fresh, as though the child had only just passed this way. My throat constricted with a mixture of dread and resolve. I took a step forward into the tunnel, leaving the shaft's safety behind, and the sobbing ceased in an abrupt hush that pressed against my ears like a finger on a drum. Silence. Then, behind me, the rope clattered as though dropped. My breath hitched. There was no turning back now. The tunnel narrowed until my shoulders brushed damp stone, and the algae's green glow revealed scratch marks, small, desperate gouges that trailed like fingerprints along the walls. My flashlight quivered in my hand, the beam catching on a cluster of bones half buried in mud. Not animal, but human, slender as a child's wrist. A tremor seized my ribs. The sobbing had fallen silent, replaced by a low hum that vibrated through the rock, a heartbeat too steady to be my own. I pressed on, each step sloshing through cold water that rose to my ankles, and the air grew thick with the scent of decayed willow and wet linen. Ahead, the tunnel opened into a circular chamber, its ceiling lost in shadow, and at its center stood an overturned bucket, water pooling beneath it in concentric ripples. I knelt to inspect footprints, small, bare, trailing from the darkness to the bucket and back again, as if someone practiced a ritual I was only beginning to understand. The hum swelled, and I realized it was my own breathing echoing off the walls, multiplied into a chorus. The sobbing returned, faint but urgent, and I caught a word, my name, drawn out in a tone of pleading recognition. My heart seized. I spun the flashlight upward and saw, etched into the rock in charcoal, a crude drawing. Two stick figures, one larger, one smaller, father and child, hand in hand beside a well. Beneath them, a single word scrawled in trembling script: remember. Ice flooded my veins. Memory flickered. A summer dusk, my daughter's laughter carried on a breeze, and the collapse of her small frame into silence. The realization punched the air from my lungs. This was no random child. This place had called me here to demand I face what I'd buried beneath guilt and grief. The sobbing pressed close, a breath on my neck. The bucket shifted with a scrape. I rose, hands shaking, and strode toward the center of the chamber, blood humming in my ears. The water beneath it surged as though alive, and I understood the point of no return had come. To turn back was to leave her behind, to forsake my own memory and condemn her echo to this drowned hollow for eternity. I dropped to my knees and scooped water into my palms, letting it drip through my fingers like lost moments. The hum resolved into a clear whisper: find the token. I stood, resolve hardening in my chest, and scanned the chamber floor. Under the bucket, half submerged, lay a small wooden toy boat. Its paint faded, but the carved initials still legible. Her name. Tears blurred my vision as I knelt and lifted it, water dripping cold as bone. The boat's hull felt impossibly warm, pulsing with a life that reached into my fingertips and tugged at my heart. Clutching the token, I felt the tunnel behind me shift, the hum and whispers urging me onward. I tucked the boat into my pocket and rose, pulse steady with purpose. I would follow this echo to its source, even if it meant surrendering every last memory I held dear. The tunnel opened into a vast underground cavern, its arched ceiling lost in darkness, and the air grew thick with the scent of damp stone and stagnant water that clung to my lungs like a shroud. The beam from my flashlight danced across a shallow pool that stretched to the far wall, each ripple catching flecks of phosphorescent algae in a ghostly green glow. My boots sank into cool water, sending concentric waves across the surface. A soft singing began, an off-key lullaby that wrapped around me, tugging at memory's edges with the same mix of comfort and dread I felt when I first heard my daughter's voice. I gripped the toy boat in my pocket, its wooden hull warm against my palm, and stepped deeper into the pool, water rising to my thighs. With each step, the singing grew clearer, the melody fractured by echo until it felt like dozens of tiny voices murmuring in unison. The walls dripped overhead, each drop a punctuation in the hush. I followed the music to a rocky outcrop where the water pooled deepest, and there I saw her, a pale shape beneath the surface, small and still, hair drifting like seaweed. My heart thundered. I knelt at the edge and, trembling, placed the boat on the water. The lullaby stuttered, then swelled, and the boat's paint glowed faintly before the water accepted it, drawing it toward the submerged shape. I leaned closer, breath clouding the beam, and saw her eyes open, dark, knowing, impossibly ancient. The boat floated above her hand, which reached up, slender fingers brushing the hull. A pulse of cold surged through me. The singing shifted into a whisper. "Thank you." The outcrop trembled. Behind me, the tunnel's entrance collapsed with a thunderous crack, rocks sliding into the pool and sealing the path back. I was trapped. Water lapped at my waist. The lullaby echoed in my ears, a promise and a warning. Holding my daughter's boat, I understood that before I could leave, I would have to find the truth beneath the surface and confront the memory I had fought so hard to bury. The water closed over my knees, then my waist, icy and relentless, as I pressed forward toward the faint glow on the far wall. Each step sent ripples across the phosphorescent sheen, turning the cavern floor into a churning sea of pale light. My lungs burned with every breath as I waded deeper, and the lullaby whisper grew insistent, threading through my mind with impossible clarity. "Remember, Father. Remember." The toy boat thumped against my thigh, its warmth pulsing like a heartbeat I could not ignore. As I approached a cluster of stone pillars rising from the water, the beam of my flashlight revealed carvings, scenes of a little girl laughing as she chased seagulls on a sunlit shore, her hand tight in her father's. Below, in stark contrast, another carving showed the same girl cradled in a man's arms, her eyes closed as though in eternal sleep. A sob caught in my throat. The carvings trembled in the lantern glow, and the water lapped at the pillars with soft, deliberate taps, as though something beneath the surface drummed out a warning. I reached a low dais set into the cavern wall, where an alcove held a small wooden box. Its lid was carved with the same initials as the toy boat. My fingers found the box, slick with condensation. Inside lay a single, perfect seashell, its spiral gleaming like polished bone. I lifted it, and a rush of memories flooded me. A carefree day on the pier, her small hand pressing a shell into mine, her voice clear and bright. "Keep this safe, Daddy." The memory fractured as the cavern shuddered. The tunnel's collapse had sealed the way back. Here was my only path forward. A hush fell, and the water stilled. The whisper was no longer distant, but right beside me, a warm breath on my cheek. "Return what was lost." I traced the shell's spiral with my thumb, feeling the ridges speak of ocean depths and time's passage. With resolve coiling in my chest, I placed the shell into the hull of the toy boat. The vessel glowed, casting a halo of light that radiated outward, setting the water ablaze with pale gold. The pillars of stone pulsed in rhythm, as though awakened from slumber. Behind me, a hidden archway yawned open, carved stones grinding apart to reveal a narrow passage slick with moss. The lullaby rose to a crescendo, then dropped to a single echoing note. I hesitated only a moment, enough to let the weight of sorrow and guilt catch in my spine, then stepped toward the opening, boat cradled to my chest. The passage smelled of fresh rain and brine, a promise of the outside world. Each stride pushed the floodwaters back, leaving a trail of golden luminescence in my wake. At the tunnel's mouth, daylight fractured through a grill of roots and stone. I could hear the wind's distant roar and, impossibly, the muted laughter of a child. The final whisper drifted through the gap. "Go home." My chest tightened. I was not the same man who had knelt beside that mossy well. I had descended into guilt's dark heart and reclaimed what was lost. Beyond the grill lay the world I'd left behind, waiting for me to reshape it with this newfound light. One step remained, and with it, the promise of redemption or the risk of becoming another echo in the well's dark embrace. I pressed through the tangle of roots at the tunnel's mouth and stepped onto the familiar mossy forest floor. The toy boat cradled against my heart, and the seashells spiral cool against my palm. The morning mist clung to the tree trunks, and each breath tasted of pine resin and possibility. As I looked back, the well's mouth yawned silent and unmoving, its surface shimmering with the ghosts of ripples I had stirred. In that moment, I realized the well and its darkness were not only a place but a vessel of my own buried grief, demanding that I dredge up what I had lost. My daughter's laughter, her small hand in mine, and the promise I had broken on that last afternoon at the pier. With each step away, the weight on my shoulders lightened. I felt her presence in the hush between the bird's song and the wind through the leaves. A gentle reminder that memory can anchor us to love rather than drag us into despair. The toy boat's glow faded into the dawn, but its warmth remained in my chest, a quiet beacon guiding me back to the world I had once fled. I understood then that loss is not a void to fear, but a lantern to carry, its light flickering with every memory we choose to nurture rather than bury. If the hush of the abandoned well and its echoes of memory resonated with you, please light up that like button and subscribe to WhisperTales so we can continue unveiling the quiet corners of our minds together.